This is one of the world's biggest problems. When we think slavery, and we can think about the number of people or sentient beings in slavery, that's a huge problem, and there is a solution.
I learned so much by watching that documentary, and it was the hip hop community that those who are vegan, they were being a voice for the voiceless. Basically, they talked about redlining, they talked about food deserts, they talked about things that a lot of people would prefer to deny and say, "Oh, that couldn't possibly still be going on."
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veganpreneur Revolution. But guess what? Today is Juneteenth, and it's a significant day in American history celebrating the liberation of Black people from slavery. And with that liberation, we're going to be talking today about the correlation of animals being bred for slaughter and enslaved to that breeding. And, I realize, we both realize that this is a delicate conversation, but you know what? It's a powerful discussion because we're going to talk about some key points and considerations for all of us to keep in mind as we're moving through this space of veganism, whether you're a vegan or not. This is very impactful. So stay tuned, stay in the conversation with us, because I'm Lynn Hawkins, your co-host, along with my amazing
Kathleen Gage. How are you? And I'm really glad we're having this conversation today, because these are important conversations to have. And a lot of times people don't want to hear about the past. They say, well, let's live in the present. But if you don't know the past, you're destined to repeat it. And unfortunately, there is a lot of repeat going on. And it's important to shine the spotlight on Juneteenth, on slavery of all types. And we're going to talk about that today. And then what the solutions are, because really what it boils down to is the solution is embracing differences. It's love. It's really looking at we are all one. We are connected. And people can deny that. But if you look at it, there is such a connection between the interrelationship of every sentient being. So it's great to be here today. And I want to remind people that as you listen to the Veganpreneur Revolution podcast show, we'd sure appreciate for you to subscribe to this channel wherever you're listening. You might be watching it on YouTube. You might be listening on Spotify. You might be listening on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're all over the place. And our goal is to shine the spotlight on very important messages. So, Lynn, great to be here.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's great to be here with you too. And I just have to say, one of the things that I so love about our working together is the fact that not only are we aligned in so many things in life and in business, but the important issues of life, we have a similar thinking about, with our own histories of being discriminated against and, the prejudices that we've had to encounter, that we are on, I believe, because of how we've learned how to deal with them and move through them, we're on the other side of them, knowing what distinguishes us from other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that, it's also a reason why a lot of our clients really want to work with us, because they know our backgrounds, they know our diversity, they know the fact that, when we bring up a conversation like Juneteenth, we aren't just doing it to be a part of whatever's happening in the world. We're doing it for a particular purpose. And in that purpose, the intention of this is to not only let people know what Juneteenth is about and what it means to enslaved African Americans. It marks a pivotal point in the liberation of Black people from slavery, even though a lot of white people did not want it,
Right.
vehemently opposed it. And we can see that similarity in what we're experiencing now. I watched the other day a video of Linda Middlesworth at the state capitol in California, Sacramento, California, getting escorted out of the building, dragged, okay,
Right.
out of the building by security as she was trying to get the attention of state legislators to look at how they are promoting milk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. It's really crazy because science has proven that cow's milk, is for cow babies,
Right.
not for
Right.
people, and the harm that it does to us, just like in slavery. What Black people were forced to eat, the scraps, and being inclined to look at them as the delicacies of our culture,
Mm-hmm.
they were really foods that killed us.
Right. Right.
And to look at freedom as a whole, we have to look at all of the things that have enslaved us as a people, as human beings, and the reasons why. Because even if you look at the things that are happening, if you don't understand the reasons why, what was behind slavery of Black people for the benefit of white people? It was money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit of animal slavery for slaughter today? It's money. And today, as we look at Juneteenth, commemorating the end of slavery in the United States, we honor the resilience, the culture, and the achievement of Black people all over the world, and especially here in the United States.
Right.
And while we know that there are other instances, I mean, you and I have talked about the Holocaust, and you just mentioned a little while ago about the book that related the Holocaust to the correlation between the slavery of Jews to the slavery of animals.
Correct.
We are seeing that across the board in so many ways. It's kind of like, who would want to enslave anyone? And, we look at our pets, and I've had people say, well, I don't want any pets because I don't want to enslave little animals like that. And I'm thinking, our pets have more freedom. They live the high life, right?
The good life.
Good
Absolutely.
life.
Absolutely.
And so it amazes me how someone could even think that, having a pet is enslaving them. And maybe it's a little more when you're talking about a turtle in a tank, or fish in a tank,
Right.
versus they're being free in the ocean. And that's something to consider. What kind of pets do you want? And what kind of pets might you have that are being enslaved, like that example was? And I look at today as being a day for us to be in a conversation around liberation and justice,
Right.
and freedom, and the ongoing struggle for equality, human rights, animal rights, the planetary rights.
Right.
The planet has rights that we're infringing on. And let's shift it all.
Well,
Because
I want to kind of springboard off of what you said about the turtles in the ocean, because in some ways, the fact of what we've done to the oceans,
yeah,
the turtles are enslaved in the ocean. They're wrapped up in
plastic,
fish line, nets, and all that, and it goes into their necks and their little flippers, whatever you call the turtle flippers. But it happens to the fish too. And the reality is that any type of enslavement, any type of slavery it's cruel. And when I look at the animals that we have, that I think they own me more than I own them, and we don't own each other. It's like we are the caretakers of our animals, and these are all rescues. These are animals that were abused. And just heard on the news yesterday, and this was great news in our area, there's a woman that for a long time, probably 15, 20 years, she has done horrendous things to animals, to where there have been dead animals animals on her property, and she keeps buying them and selling them, and just horrendous stuff. And the laws were not such that it protected the animals, and she kept getting a slap on the hand. Well, last night on the news, they said that she now got 4 years in prison, and it's like, thank goodness, because if there's no punishment for the crime keeps happening, and we minimize it. And it's just like normalizing unhealthy. We minimize a crime and we say, oh, well, that's just life. That's just business as usual. And it's like we were talking about how oftentimes something comes to the forefront and people say, well, why are you bringing that up? Why are you making such a big deal out of it? And it could be for people of color rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, whatever it may be. And if you don't shine a spotlight on it, then people don't know what's going on. Some of the things that have gone on are horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And we have to shine a spotlight and then find ways to educate people about kindness, about love, about connection, about the fact that there are certain things that are completely unacceptable. And if we just sit by and we say nothing, we're as guilty as the people committing the crime, in my opinion. It's like we have to stand. And that's why in what we do, Lynn, in our business, Vegan Visibility Productions, we work with organizations, individuals, companies that are making a difference in the world for the animals, for people, for the environment, because it's all connected. You can't live in silos. And if we're harming the environment, we're harming people. If we're harming the animals, we're harming the environment. And to deny that, a lot of people are in denial, and you have the people that say, oh, for you vegans, I'm going to eat double the meat. And it's like, why would you make such an ignorant comment? That to me is an ignorant comment, because it's like, it's not about me. It's about the animals. It's about the environment.
It's about hurting you when you know what meat ends up doing inside of a person.
Not only what it does to the environment, what it does to our health. And I heard Dr. Clapper recently, and I just adore that man. He's in his mid 80s, maybe late 80s. And he is just incredible how he just makes a point and he goes, it's the meat. It's the meat. It's like, you go. But
he did that on somebody's show one time, and they did a clip of it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was so good, because
let's start with a definition of what Juneteenth is, because I think it's important for people. Some people don't know about Juneteenth, and it was only 4 years ago that it was made a national holiday to recognize and honor. I don't know what year it became a recognized holiday.
1865. It went into effect in
But when did we start recognizing
1865. It was actually starting to get recognition in the Black community in the 60s. One of the things that Martin Luther King actually put on the map was the fact that Juneteenth was a real day, that something happened. Mm-hmm. And what the recognition was that the president approved the Emancipation Proclamation, and it took 2.5 years for it to travel from the Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. area to Texas, and Galveston, Texas in particular. And it was the day when it was the entire country found out about the emancipation of slaves, because slavery was something that was relegated by state. Mm-hmm. And it was big news that the federal government actually overthrew what states were able to do, because you used to be able to say, well, we're a slave state, and we're not.
Right.
And when this happened, it changed everything as it related to federal mandated law. And does anybody give African Americans credit for that? Because there were some laws that were enacted that were federal, but not only did they not get the kind of attention, they didn't get the kind of respect that it's brought about.
That's an important point to make, because you said in the African American community, people started recognizing it in the 60s. Well, it has to go beyond one community. It has to go. And it's just like with animal rights. It's just like with women's rights, with LGBTQ rights. It's like it can stay within that community, and we know what goes on, but do other people? And so I think it's important that we really all understand that there are so many things that have occurred in history that we do need to educate ourselves, because right now, if you look at the political structure, we're not going to get into politics, but I do want to say that there are things happening, laws being passed right now that are taking our rights away. And and people say, well, when this happens, then enough is enough. When is enough enough? And it should be that when you see an injustice occurring, whether it be for elderly people, whether it be for children, whatever it may be, we have to speak up. And that's why it's so important for us to talk about Juneteenth today, because we have to let people know that this has occurred. And there are still a lot of people that don't know, or they don't think it was that big of a deal. Just like Stonewall with the LGBT community, it was a big deal, and it changed a lot, so and it changed a lot in the way that people realized that this is a much bigger issue than we ever realized. So what are some of the other aspects of Juneteenth, and what has changed as a result, but what still needs to change?
Well, Juneteenth is really a time that emphasizes the importance of acknowledging and addressing historical injustices. Just like you mentioned, when you don't know about it, you don't do anything about it or for it, around it. Yet when you do know about it, you're able to act in a more responsible way. And that's what it's all about, right? Everybody taking responsibility for themselves and doing the right thing, doing what you believe is right. Even when someone does something wrong, if they're doing it in the vein of they think that it's the right thing to do, I think people are more apt to forgive that. However, you can't tell me that you're doing something and you think it was the right thing to do when deep down you know good and well that it was not.
There's the answer right there. Do you look at yourself in the mirror and go, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that, or I know that's not right? And, again, it's really important to have these dialogues, because today with AI, we can be fed information that is such misinformation that it changes history. And that's why we have to have these conversations, so that the true history comes out. My mother was in Europe during Belgium, or during the war. She was in Belgium, and her country was occupied by the Nazis. And the stories that I heard of the horrendous things that took place in that book, Forever Treblinka, it talks about the correlation between how you treat animals is how you treat people. And some people say, oh, no, there's a big difference. No, there's not. If you're cruel to animals, on some level, you're going to be cruel to people. If you take animals' rights away, you're going to take the rights of human beings away. And again, it really goes back to like what you said with with slavery. It was all about the almighty dollar. It was about some people lining their pockets, while the majority of people suffered on some level. And, so I think it's important for people to really recognize that it's never too late to speak out. It's never too late to change your perspective and to say, oh, I didn't know, but now that I know, I can do things differently. Speaking of doing things differently, if you've not subscribed to this channel, do something different and subscribe to this channel. We'd sure appreciate it. And you're listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution podcast show. And the reason it's called Veganpreneur Revolution is we are leading the charge of a revolution to raise awareness around compassion, around the environment, around people's health. Because truth be told, that's a very important part of this whole conversation, is our health, and to make sure that we take care of ourselves in a way that we can truly do the work that we're here to do.
And I want to play on that, what you just said, the work that we are here to do, because while we are focused in these conversations, people, animals, the planet, we are about the veganpreneur. We're about the entrepreneurs, the healthpreneurs, the people who are out there in this conversation of using lifestyle and food as medicine to amplify their voices. Because one of the things, and I go back to this frequently, the first time that I heard that the Dalai Lama actually said that the Western woman would be leading the charge for change to better our world. And that's paraphrasing it, of course. I started thinking, what part in that can I play? And looking at what I have learned since then from some amazing people, which many of them are going to be at this year's National Health Association conference, I'm looking at, I know how to do my part. And I've always been in the position of and loved the job of supporting business and helping businesses to grow. It's one of the reasons that I personally got an accelerated business development certification, amongst others. And one of the things that I kept in mind was, what is one of the world's biggest problems and how can I contribute to the solution?
Right.
This is one of the world's biggest problems. When we think slavery, and we can think about the number of people or sentient beings in slavery, that's a huge problem, and there is a solution. And while I say that, yes, it's about shutting down all of these ag farms and ag businesses. Let's grow plants. Even the animals are eating the plants. They want more plants. And we can all thrive on that. Now, I know I took my dog to the vet yesterday, and I've been feeding my little guy vegan dog food. And I haven't actually told her until yesterday. I said, I've been thinking about doing this. And she was very intentional about telling me that, he's part part omnivore and part carnivore. Carnivore.
Carnivore.
Carnivore and omnivore. And she said, I haven't seen anything that suggests that all plants are good for dogs because of that. And I said, well, I started with a mix. And then the more I talked to some people, the dogs that have been on this all plant diet have done extremely well. And she looked at me and was like, so I'll have to share some of that information with you. She was like,
I'd love to hear it. Well, how's Hero doing? How was his checkup?
His checkup was great. He's got a little belly rash from being out in, everybody gets their yards treated, right?
Right.
You get treated this, that, and the other. And this little guy wants to go smell everything.
Well,
so he's all up in everything. So he's got a little belly rash, but he's doing good for 11 years old. He still jumps and runs. I saw him the other day. We were going out for a walk and he just darted off after something. And I was like, oh my goodness. he's almost my age.
That's amazing. Well, and you're doing pretty darn good, girl. You are doing great, but, I want to go back to what you said about the Dalai Lama saying women will lead the charge. That's paraphrased. And what's really important for people to realize, especially the women listening and the men who do support women's rights, is to look at how some of the women's rights are being taken away right now. And, we can't pretend they're not being taken away. And this impacts all of us. And so it starts with the women, then it goes into, the Hispanic community, then it goes into whatever else. And then, it's that trickle down effect of like, you can't pretend that things are okay and we'll live by the status quo. We have to be willing to speak up when we see that injustice. So I think it's amazing that women are definitely leading the charge. And it's so interesting when somebody says, oh, a woman could not be president because she's too emotional, and she would just have ups and downs in her moods and everything. And it's like, well, men haven't done the best job with the world, so maybe a woman in charge wouldn't be such a bad idea.
And, who's to say men haven't gone through all of that and then some, with some of the things that we've seen happening from our leadership.
Right.
But, and speaking of that, justice and the rights of people, along with the justice and rights of animals, we are still fighting for our rights to speak and be seen and to have and to not get redlined out of neighborhoods. And, we are still in that suffering and oppression that you would think 100 years later, we would be out of 200
Right,
years
right,
later.
right.
Yet we're still in it. And we know that the fight for the rights of animals is a battle that will not be won overnight. And it will not be won with one conversation. It
Right.
will not be won one person at a time. It's going to be won through the collective ability that we have to control the economy in our favor. And how do we do that? One of the considerations in this whole thing is ethical. Is this
Right,
the right thing
right,
to do?
right.
Another consideration is health. And how does this impact health? Another consideration is economical. And what does it mean for the economy? Well, when you think about the fact that there are hundreds of billions of dollars in the food industry that is being manipulated to cause us to spend even more to I was thinking the other day, if we go on the way that we are, the people making the money won't be making the money anymore.
They'll be too sick to even care about the
We'll
money.
be too sick and we'll
Yeah.
all be dead.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And so why should we continue on this path? It just doesn't make good sense.
It doesn't. And there's a couple of movies and books that I want to mention. One is They're Trying to Kill Us.
Oh, yeah.
And phenomenal. And I learned so much by watching that documentary. And it was the hip hop community that those who are vegan, they were being a voice for the voiceless, basically. They talked about redlining. They talked about food deserts. They talked about things that a lot of people would prefer to deny and say, oh, that couldn't possibly still be going on. It's like, yes, it is possibly still going on. It is going on. And so I encourage people to watch the film, They're Trying to Kill Us. Another one that I just came across, this woman, her name is Dr. Casey Means, and she wrote a book called Good Energy. And she is so articulate and connects the dots so well about the manipulation of the food and the healthcare system. And she's got her education at Stanford, and she's a doctor. She's a surgeon, and she left surgery to be an advocate for people's rights around food and healthy eating. And I believe she's vegan, but just phenomenal way that she presented the information. And I heard her on Jay Shetty's podcast show. We'll put the link in the show notes because all of this kind of information is so important for people to hear. And of course, there's What's the Health? But I would say in conversation around Juneteenth, the movie They're Trying to Kill Us is probably the most appropriate to align with the reality of what's going on, because there are some areas in the country that, and we're talking in the United States, where it's easier to get a pack of cigarettes and a 6-pack of beer than it is to get an apple. And why is that? Exactly. And there are other areas that if a grocery store shuts down, and these are the same areas actually, that if a grocery store shuts down, it's in the way that the contracts and the leases and whatever they do to manipulate the system is written, that a new store cannot be put there, a new grocery store, for 20 years. I think it's 15, 20 years. And which means that people can't get healthy food. There are areas in our country where healthy food is not available. Within our school system and in underserved communities, this is more prevalent than in very affluent communities. Healthy foods are not available to the school children, and they're forced, they are given milk, and it's like that milk supply is subsidized by our government. Mm-hmm. And so there are horrendous things going on all the way from the ground level on up to the highest level of politicians and politics. And
it is the politics. And if I may, let me just piggyback off of what you said about milk. I wonder if people realize that right now there is legislation being looked at to be passed mandating milk, cow's milk, be put in every school and provided for every child, regardless of whether or not they want it. So that means two things. First of all, you're forcing cow's milk on humans and children who have allergies, children who have just internal adverse reactions to cow's milk are being forced to drink it, because what children look at is, oh, it's milk. And then if it's chocolate milk, it's chocolate milk. And then we look at children having cancer,
Right.
and, having just all kinds of issues behind it. Acne, kidney stones, hair loss. And people don't realize that milk is one of the major contributors. Milk and dairy. If people cut out
Absolutely.
milk and dairy, it would save the dairy industry. It would force dairy farmers to do something else. And why not plant food on all of that land that you have? And then let's look at the other side of this. Do we want our children ill, or do we want them healthy?
Right.
If the children are our future, then let's have discussions about what we can do alternatively. And how about making fresh juices that can go from the kitchen in the school to the classrooms, and that be part of the midday snack, or the midday snack for these children.
Absolutely.
And there is one state in the US, and we're working with an organization that is actually helping this to move into other states and other schools, other school districts. But there is one state, the state of Illinois, last August 2023, passed a bill that put in law the fact that every school in the state of Illinois had to provide a plant-based meal option for lunch for every child who opted in for that type of lunch. Now, the problem was, it's a year later almost, and not a lot of people in the state of Illinois even know this.
Right.
And so we're part of the marketing effort that is getting the word out there, which is one of the reasons that we're talking about it now, because if you know about what's happening with Illinois, and you would like plant-based food options in your child's school, if you are a food service provider or the lead of the food service for a particular school district, please let us help to get this movement. This is part of our revolution.
Right.
Get this movement with some trajectory and have some changes made. Now, what we do know is that it can be easily done on a district level, because the district is the one that governs what the schools actually serve. They make the menus, they dispense the menus, they actually are the ones that control the cost and spending as it relates to that. There is one school district in particular in the state of New York, who the food service leader, the person in charge of the district food services for all of the schools in that district, reportedly already after 6 years doing this, and then think about that too, 6 years putting plant-based foods in schools, saving millions of dollars a year. What could a school district redistribute those funds to with that kind of savings?
Absolutely. And I love how you shined a spotlight on that, because a lot of people don't know that things like this are going on. And it's interesting because a program can be implemented, but if nothing is done to get the message out there, then it kind of dies by the wayside. And so it's important that people.
It took 2.5 years for it to get the news to get to Texas.
There you go. But I want to address a couple of things that you said. One is, I just read that Sonoma County has a something on the ballot about getting rid of factory farms in Sonoma County. Love it. And it was so great to watch the dialogue on Twitter. And then every so often you'd have a bot. And the way you can tell if something's a bot, and this is something for your awareness, watch people who are viewing and listening, is when you see a comment that's designed to get some people all riled up and an argument going, go look at the profile, see how many followers they have, see how many posts they've made, and see if they even have a profile pic. Because if there's no followers, it's a bot. And this bot made a whole bunch of comments about the Sonoma County law. And they said, oh, would never vote for that. I'm going to eat more meat and all this kind of stuff. And I went and looked, and then I put, oh, that's just a bot. Don't pay no mind to it. And so anyway, I wanted to point that out, that there is legislation being put on the ballot that, we can change the laws. And also to know about what's going on in the school system in Illinois. It's very important. Okay. Another thing to look at is, you were talking about how milk makes people sick, and especially children. I mean, if you start a child on milk from the time they're born, they're going to get asthma, they're going to get allergies, they're going to get also cancer. Now with the rate of type 2 diabetes in young children, obesity in young children, we got to connect the dots there. And if people say there isn't a problem, just take a look at what's happening to our healthcare system as a result of all the illnesses and the diseases. But we're 70 years old. That's 140 years together. Okay, 40 years to 70 years each, and we're healthy. We don't get colds. We don't get sick. We don't get the common ailments that a lot of people get. And we know people that are in their 20s and 30s. They're always complaining about headaches. They're complaining about, I got another cold. I got the flu. I've got acne. I've got irritable bowel syndrome. Oh, I've got the runs or whatever. And it's like, okay, TMI. But the reality is that when you're healthy, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I know that it was interesting because I saw something once where this guy actually thought that chocolate milk came from chocolate cows. Like, what? Okay, so that's misinformation. That's obviously somebody.
So was he a kid? A kid or a big kid?
He was grown yet. But here's the thing with milk, what a lot of people don't realize, they just think milk shows up on the shelf at the grocery store. Follow the trail of where it came from. They keep the cows impregnated. They make sure that they're going to either have a baby or they've had a baby. And as soon as the baby is born, it's taken away from them. And some people, they shut down from that and they go, well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? That's a mother and her baby. That's a mother and her baby. So think in terms of like the compassion around what's happening. And with milk, it's a very, very, very cruel product. I mean, there is no two ways about it. Like Dr. Clapper says, it's the meat. I'm saying it's the cows, it's the babies, it's the suffering. You've got to pay attention to that. And people go, oh, it doesn't impact me. It certainly does. Take a trip to any grocery store and look at how ill people are today. And these are chronic illnesses. These are not acute illnesses. Acute illness that's what our healthcare system was designed for. But it's so, big pharma's in bed with healthcare, in bed with the politicians, and on and on and on.
Milk, meat industries.
Mm-hmm. We have to look at
and it's all about the money. That's why
Mm-hmm.
lobbying has become such a great sport, because lobbyists can go for convincing those about making money, making more money, yet none of it really takes into account and considers the health and well-being of people, the planet, and in the middle, the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And, it really brings up the approach that we've taken around education. We actually are doing like the podcast. This is an educational opportunity for us. We do a Wednesday Vive Live, which is another educational opportunity for us. We're sharing some amazing nuggets about digital marketing and business growth. And we're doing more education. We're aligned with an organization called Sage Circle Alliance, where there are other professionals in this conversation of using lifestyle and food as medicine who want to further this education, because we know that is one of the first and strongest ways to make inroads and an impact in communities. And we're doing everything that we can in the form of education because we know the value of educating in this space doesn't just give you food for thought. It doesn't just feed your mind with information. It actually has the potential to change lives. Because what we're educating on and what we're helping others to educate on, what we're amplifying voices around educating on, is about creating a shift in the direction that we are headed right now that is tantamount to further enslaving people. And if you think about it, people are enslaved by the foods that they eat. Oh, I can't give up my.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you just, yeah, that's a whole, yeah, that, oof.
And this is all the education. This is one of the reasons that I became a certified hypnotherapist, because a lot of times we have gone so far as to not give ourselves the ability to make those changes without help. And whether you come to me as a hypnotherapist or you know someone else who's a hypnotherapist, if you are somebody who is in this conversation about, I can't and I don't know why, I want to, but I can't and I don't know why, it's more deep-seated than that.
Right.
And some of it is cultural, some of it is from childhood, some of it is from trauma, some of it is from an underlying event that created the thinking that you did not want to do anything else. And some of it is chemically induced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a whole big thing about alcohol and drug addiction.
Mm-hmm.
There is food addiction that is chemical based. And those are the things you need help with.
Absolutely. You know, and I want to share on that whole thing of addiction to food is the book Ultra Processed People. I was shocked when I read that. You know, it's interesting because I've been in this space for a few years now and I keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And it's like the layers get stripped away and you learn something new. Like how young children are, and they're giving them psychosomatic drugs. It's for psychological and
ADHD
and they're giving them to them when they're infants before they've had a chance for their brain to develop. And I just thank God that the drugs were not around at the level they are when I was a kid, because I was off the charts. I mean, and I remember getting tested at a conference once, and the woman said, well, you've tested that you are ADHD. Would you like to do something about it? I said, quite happy the way I am. No, thank you. Because she was going to give me the name of a doctor that could give me medication. It's like, wait a minute. Our food can change a lot around the emotions and the depression and all that, but ultra processed people, and it's like we are chained to our food. It's like, and the whole thing of people saying, I can't make that change. In some ways, it's that you won't, because I heard something, and I've shared this before. I've been sober for 40 years and I was 100% addicted to alcohol and drugs. And I mean, to the point that I ended up out on the streets, the whole 9 yards. And I look at unhoused people now and I go, but for the grace of God, there go I. And I made different choices. And I was blessed to have people who came into my life who basically took me by the hand and they said, just for today, don't drink, just for today. And for me back then, that's all I could manage. I couldn't manage, 40 years worth of not drinking. I could only manage sometimes 10 minutes at a time. But I had
and it was chemically induced.
It certainly was.
Reasoning behind that.
But
people don't understand.
And I do want to say that I had one sponsor when I was like, wait, you know, I was just like complaining about whatever. And she goes, you don't know how good you have. And I said, you don't get it. And I said, I need to have that drink. And she said that when you stay sober is when your desire to be sober is stronger than the desire for that drink. And with food, sometimes it has to go to that level because food's been made to get us addicted. Think about it. When you crave those potato chips and your mouth starts watering and you're just like, that first bite is like, oh, it's like a drug. And then after a while it wears off. And so you have to have more and more and more. And the food manufacturers, they do chemically induce the food to become addictive. And that's what you'll find when you start reading all these books and you watch the documentaries. But definitely Get the They're Trying to Kill Us documentary. Watch that, and watch with very open eyes and an open mind. Read the book Ultra Processed People, because it will shock you at what's being done. Salt, sugar, fat is another one. The
yeah.
effect. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And every time I hear, like, I just ordered Dr. Mean's book, The Good Energy, because she lays out specifically how we get addicted, what to do about it, the whole thing about sleep hygiene and all that. I mean, there's so many elements to living a healthy life, and it starts with the desire to be aware and to know that we have been lied to. No doubt about it.
And Kathleen, in all of that, there are times where we want to beat ourselves up. How could I fall for that? How did this happen to me? I felt like I woke up one day and I was 200 pounds overweight. What happened? And in order to initiate the reversal and release of some of these things, it requires compassion.
Absolutely.
Compassion for self, just like releasing the animals from having to be slaughtered to be a piece on your plate for you to consume in illness. Have compassion for them. Have compassion for yourself, that you were part of the ruse.
Right.
That you believed that this was a good thing to do. Oh, but it tastes so good. Well, guess what? They put something in it that made it that way for you. That A1 steak sauce didn't just come about for no reason.
Absolutely.
And, have compassion for them, even those who are thinking that, they don't care. They don't care. Having compassion for them releases you from the anger that can be associated with finally coming to know this stuff. And I have to tell you, I'm going to say it, pissed when I finally woke up at like almost 16 years old, and a friend of mine said, "So, do you believe that Columbus discovered America?" And I thought, well, that's what they taught me in school. And then it was like, and if you do, bless her heart, she didn't call me out. And if you do, then you believe that I see that car over there. I'm going to go discover that car and it's mine.
Oh,
and I thought,
I love it.
Well, goodness sake, right? And then to really get the history of Columbus and his travels and the pillaging and all that went on as he made his way back and forth on numerous trips across the ocean, and the people that died in the wake of his movement, it's like, how do people celebrate that?
It was the manipulation, it was the brainwashing, it was the indoctrination.
It was the money.
Yeah, and I remember when I found out what the truth was, and I told some people I don't celebrate Columbus Day, and they're going,
and I was pissed.
Too radical. It's like, no, I don't. I think that I have to honor what's right for me. And so, along those lines, something I would invite people to think about, and this is really something that I encourage you to spend some time with and maybe even journal about. And maybe you rescue animals. Maybe you do have four-legged companions, fur babies that are part of your family, and you love them and you take good care of them and you nurture them and you give them whatever they need to live a happy life. And then in the next breath, you're cooking that chicken for dinner. And it's like, and like we have rescue chickens. And I had somebody said, how could you be vegan if you have chickens? It's like, no, they're rescued chickens. They're not going to, we're not going to consume them. They're very well taken care of. And as long as they stay away from my car, they're fine, But because sometimes they'll come to the back door, they'll come in the garage, go to the back door and start clucking because they want their special treats. I mean, they've got me trained so well. But the reality is that I did work in the pet industry for a while, and it took me until I was 64 before I actually got what this was about. And so it's only been 6 years that I've been on this vegan journey. And I look at how much I said I loved animals, how much I cared about animals, and yet I was consuming animals. And I was quite a carnivore. So when people say, oh, it was easy for you, it's like, No, it was no different than anybody else. I made a decision, and every day I make that decision, and it's aligned with my values. It's aligned with my compassion. It's aligned with the fact that I want to be as healthy as possible. We've talked about this, Lynn, that you look at different communities, and there are certain diseases that are more prevalent in some communities than others. And the underserved communities, oftentimes because they can't get health care, there is an explosion of certain diseases. And the reality is that at 70 years old, I worked out this morning. I went to the gym, and I may go on a hike later today. I want to use what God has given me and use it in the right way so that I can appreciate what I have while I have it. Because we don't know how long we're going to be around, but we've been given the gift of life. We've been given this temple. And I was listening to Sid Nodder recently, and she was talking about that in the Bible, it talks about taking care of the temple. And she goes, one thing, and her ministry is her business. And she said, one thing is that oftentimes Christians claim to be good Christians, and yet they're abusing their body with food. They're in gluttony, and they're the 7 deadly sins. So I think we need to look at, are we saying one thing on one side of our face and saying something else on the other? And will our actions match the words that we say are true to us? So if we say that we believe in compassion, if we say that we believe in health, if we say that we believe in giving the best of ourselves to every situation, are we doing that for ourselves? And, Lynn, I love this conversation today. Happy Juneteenth. And I love the fact that we are on this journey together, and who knows how this will unfold, all the opportunities that we are being given to serve at the highest and deepest level, with the fact that we are vegans. We don't make any bones about it. We are very vocal about it. And yet we know that compassion works a lot better than anger and guilting people and shaming people, that we are here to raise awareness and shine a light on what the truth is.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kathleen, for being in this conversation with me. I think it's really important for us to recognize, acknowledge, and speak to the places that we stand. I can't walk into a room and be something other than a Black woman walking into a room. Yet there are others who can be
I
in
can.
those.
I can move.
Places.
Yeah, I can move among worlds. As somebody who has a wife of 35 years, we've been together 35 years. I can go and pretend to be something I'm not, but I can't live like that. That's not, I did that for many years, and it almost killed me. It was like I walked in depression every day, because it's like, who am I? And I had people who had the courage to take me by the hand and say, be who you are. Be the authentic self. And it's an unveiling all the time. It's an unveiling. So thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. And to our audience, if you're in any of this space, fighting with health, or being challenged with your health, or being challenged with, how do I understand all of this stuff? Stay in touch with us. And beyond that, have compassion for yourself. Know that as you continue to move in a space of openness to understand, openness to be educated, you will have the information, the truth in information come your way. And Kathleen, thank you for giving such amazing resources. I so loved they're trying to kill us. There's so much of a message in it for Black people, as well as people of all races and cultures. There's so many similarities that we can see. I've traveled. I like to say I've traveled a good bit of the world, and to see some of the things that are happening in other places of the world, it's mirrored right here. And for those who are fleeing those places and coming to the United States in search of a better world, a better life, that's possible too. But I have to say that without compassion for all, compassion for animals, compassion for our planet, we're not going to last long. Right. And I'm not trying to paint a doomsday picture. I want to paint the picture of people waking up to kindness. waking up to being compassionate first with yourself, and then look beyond yourself and who you might be able to extend that compassion to, and speak up for other people's rights. A
Absolutely.
lot of times we sit back, we see something happening, and, you know, the whole see something, say something depends on who you're saying it to. You know,
True.
I'd have to put that caveat in there.
True.
But there's always a way to help create change for the better. And it starts with each one of us. So thanks for joining us today. Happy Juneteenth to all of my cousins out there and other relatives. And we're moving in so much of a mixed world now. Juneteenth has significance for us all. It used to be we're 6 degrees of separation of being related to others, and now it's like 4.
Right.
And soon it will be even less.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if you elevate it another step up, we are all connected. And when you look at it even higher than that, we are all more greatly connected because we all bleed red blood. That means that we all should be taking care of each other. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to make things happen. And we can make change here, one village at a time, coming together and collectively with our voices amplified, make some good things happen in the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, my friend. This has been amazing as always. And I appreciate you. I adore you. I love you. And I'm so grateful that we're traveling this journey together to just do what we can to raise the awareness. To everybody out there, have a great day. Please subscribe to this channel so our message gets out further and we can do more of what we're here to do. Have a great day.
Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution podcast show with Lynn, Hawkins, and Kathleen Gage. Be sure to leave a review, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel. And visit our website at veganvisibilityproductions.com. That's veganvisibilityproductions.com. Have a great day and live healthy.